All right, hey guys, Sam here with you on Monday, June 11th. Looks like a good day to do an update on Bitcoin. So, a couple of things. First, I just want to thank my partner in crime, Quan, for his really fantastic video that he did on Friday. I hope you all had a chance to look at that. I know he's teeing up for part 2 of that later in the week, so you can look forward to that. So I'm going to give you an update here. I maintain my bullish bias here. So I'm going to, kind of put this together, sort of a last stand for bulls. Can a bull survive here in this, with this price action? So as we all are, I'm sure, quite aware, we've had a little FUD come into the market over the weekend. Now, what it's done to our count here, we still... a bull is hanging by the tips of his horns here. If we break down here, if we start breaking out these lows, this is going to... Well, we're going to have to recount this. Now, this is the count. This is one. I think I had 3 counts that we were considering last week. This was the alternate should we finish. So as I have it labeled here, if this is our B and we're coming down in 5 to finish a C, and we had drawn this little hot box down here that where we had a little technical confluence, you see we've come right to that. Now, nothing revolutionary here. Let me just show you where that's coming from, just to review. This is simply just if on the assumption that I'm working down into an ABC, I'm just taking the length of the third wave here. Right here's the 4 going right to the 50, and we've gone to the algo target damn near to the tick. It's within a couple of ticks of it. Right? It looks like we've got through by just a couple here, at least on Bitstamp. So we got to look at that and say, okay, well, what can we conclude? What can we say definitively about this? Well, we're still well, let's get this tightened up. We're still holding that low. Has not been breached. So as long as that low holds, technically, right, we could still call this a second wave. And we're going to look at that possibility here now with this mighty close, and that would be unusually deep for a second wave. But as we're starting to notice, Bitcoin has a personality characteristic. It tends to be very difficult around the second wave. It's been that way for really almost the last the year, particularly during this correction. These second waves had been atypical. How about I say it that way? Well, so we have us hitting this algo target down here at just beautifully. Now we're a little shy of the trend line, and we'll look at that. But it's easy to look at this and think, oh, okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. But the real where it gets tricky here is trying to get 5 out of the 5th. So we can very easily see. Let's take this down to an hourly. We can very easily see. I've got it in log. I'm going to take it out of log because it won't really matter much on this scale. So let's open this up. So this is fairly straightforward here. So I'm going to raise that degree if you'll bear with me a sec. Okay, so let's go dig in here. I'll go to yellow and we'll do it this way. So from here, this good contender for a 1-2. Well, what's happening down here? Well, it would appear that our best case here is that we're getting a very shallow 4. This is for bulls, right? So this is going to have to, so I got to change this degree. Okay, so bear with me. We'll go to blue on that, and we'll go down to submicro. Okay, so now that makes sense. Okay, if that's 3 and then we get an ABC into a 4, I've got a nice ABC into my 2. Now take note here. Look how deep the 2 goes. Right, all weekend, that was the push on the possibility here that we had an alternate, a more bullish count here. This is repeatedly tried to get up here at this 7,800. Here's the 50 at 78.10. Well, what are we at? 78.23. Just couldn't. Just every time it looked like it was going, it would roll over. It was going, roll over. Just weakness, and all they needed was an excuse to sell it, and boy, did we rip down. So if we allow for that, if we think, okay, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, well, maybe. That'd be very shallow for a 4, no question about it. And, it wouldn't surprise me at all if we're in the process of carving out some sort of a 4. There may be a little bit more to it before we head down. Now, if we're heading down, this is where it gets a little tricky. That thing is sticky. All right, so let's just pull this stuff over here because we're going to be in a position where we're going to be invalidating some of the bullish counts here. So if we break that prior low down here, no way we can count this as a 2, obviously. So that's going to change some things, but we're not there yet. Let's not get ahead of ourselves. Right now, we've come down. All we've done, so it just is straightforward as it can possibly be. Here's the algo sell. Here's the algo target. Boom. Just the full round turn. There it is. All right, so we've done that. Well, with our Elliott hats on, can we dig out a fifth down here? It looks to me like it's just a little premature to be calling this complete because we can't get a clear 5 out of it. Now, we could do a couple of things here. So I could, from my 1, I could take from my deep 2 and just kind of pull this stuff over and say, okay, well, where is there a possibility that this count, that there could be something that I'm not seeing here? Well, here's our most probable range for a third relative to the length of the 1. Well, we just blow right through that. And you'll note here, we come down, look how tight this is. So we get just in between. This is part of why I was noting this as a confluence zone. So just in between the 2618, the length of the 1. So this is an extreme case for a third, but not uncommon to get a 2618 in the third. If you're going to get a 2618, that's where you're prone to get it. So look how we just split it. I mean, it's perfect, technically perfect. Now we need to get some sort of. It's possible the 4's in, but I think unlikely. So we need to get some sort of a retrace here to set it up for that last push down. Now how deep do we go? Well, we can't really. It's going to be tough. So this is kind of interesting here. So we note this pivot here for our 3 low. All right, let's move that a little bit off here. So there's our 3 low. That would be kind of interesting. So if I pull from my 2 to the proposed 3 low here, and we don't know for sure if that's done. Well, note what we get here. So this would be the 4 kicking in just ahead of the 38 and this structural pivot down here. So prior support, potentially now some resistance. Got to allow for that. So if that were to play that way, that's putting us down here at 63. So let's note that. Let me just put this. Let's see. How do I want to do it? I want to do it with. I want to do it this way. So give me a sec here. What do I want? I want a horizontal ray. That's what I want. Okay, so let's put that there. So I get that horizontal ray. Then I want to pull out to a 3 hour. All right, now note what happens there. All right, this is what I wanted you to see. Okay, so let me scrunch this up a little bit. If we come down to that algo target, now again, absolutely hypothetical here. So I'm saying there's a possible roadmap right there. Right, so 4 would come up to the 38, prior structural support, offers the resistance. We come down for 1 more push low. Well, if we're going to tick the algo target, we would technically be, am I there? Ooh, it's going to be really close. Really close. All right, so that would put us breaking this low, invalidating any possibility that that's a 2, that this was some sort of a correction of that first wave here, that there are multiple ways to count this, and we're going to get into that a little bit. But if here's our critical support here, at least on Bitstamp. What is that? 64.15. So if we're going to go 4-5 and come down to that algo target, that's certainly one we got to watch. Right? If we're breaking that low, that changes any bullish counts get changed. Not that we can't maintain a bullish count long term, but short term we cannot call that it's no longer an internal retracement, right? If it takes out that low, we now have an external. It invalidates any possibility for that to be a second or a correction of this wave. So we got to really pay attention to that level. So far all we've done is hit this algo target, but we got to be watching for that. So let me just pull this out a little bit, and I'm going to go back down. I'm going to go all the way down to a 15-minute. Really dig into this. So if this is our 2 up here, if this is, so we get a clear ABC into our 2. Well, within these waves, we've got to get all the subdivision to allow us to quantify it. So do I have, so let's look here. So let me pull some of this off here just to declutter. All right, so here's my 1, 2. Do I have a double bottom? Yeah, here's my 1 here. So A, B, C into my 2. Well, from that, then I'm going to get another. So I got to raise this degree here. Bear with me a sec as I go. Let's go to minuet. Okay. So from within that, I got to get 5. All right. So there's 1, 2, possibly 3, 4, 5 to give me my third. So that works. So let's get that down to a submicro. All right, so I have a contender here to give me the subdivision that I'm looking for that third. So that all of that looks potentially good. Yeah, that's a shallow 4, no question. Now we can check it. So we can take the length of the 1, project it from the 2. What do we do? Right. So, well, here's our high probability zone. So yeah, I think this is more likely our 3, and this A, B, C gives me my 4. Again, a shallow 4, no question, shallow 4, but straight rip down to give me the 5. So, you know, so where's it impulsive? So look here, look at this straight drop here. It's just straight drop here. Those are your impulses. So within this 5th, now this is where it gets a little tricky. So that coming straight down as a 5, yeah, I'm sure I'll have some disagree with that. I think that's a contender for our 5th of the 3rd. So all of this mess that we're putting in here kind of becomes our 4, which is, this is very characteristic of what you'd expect to see. So we have something along these lines shaping up. Is the 4 in? You know, I'm inclined to think there's another push up to give us a better looking 4, but just looking at that, right, that looks certainly much more like the price action you'd anticipate in a 4. Well, one more push down, you could almost get a case for there to be a diagonal in that, but it's just not there yet. This looks much more characteristic, although it's still a possibility here that we've got this coming down here. We can't discount that, even though that would be a very, very shallow 4 relative to the larger 2 here. So we don't even get 23 out of that, right? I don't think. Yeah, we're shy of 23. So unusually shallow contender there. But you know, we gotta kind of wait and see. Let's not get ahead of ourselves. Right now, sideways. All we're doing is going sideways. So we know we're conscious of all of this invalidation potential down here. Should we take out? So here's our critical pivot. We're still internal as long as we stay above that. Well, it's hard to see this. We're going to need to get a shallow 5th if it's going to end that way. Right, if it's going to come down here, we're going to need to get a shallow short 5th, and we're going to need to see 5 in it. Right, so this, yeah, I can't get anything else in there other than a 4, and I just don't think it's done yet. So this could be. Can we get? No, I can't even get a diagonal in there of an A wave. So just kind of a hurry up and wait with Bitcoin as it sits right here. So if you were short, you caught that. Good for you, man. I'm glad to hear that. Now, I have not adjusted any of my positions. I remain long. Which is not hard to do. You know, if you're holding Bitcoin with a long-term bullish bias. You know, it's a function of what you're doing. Are you trading in and out, or are you accumulating Bitcoin? I just for what it's worth, and I don't mean to influence your thinking at all. I'm just kind of interested in full disclosure. I maintain I have not sold any Bitcoin. Right? So I stay long. But even recognizing that this potential is here, right? Am I taking some drawdown on some? Absolutely. But nonetheless, but as relates to the analysis of it, this looks most likely there's some resolution coming out of this. We'll know. It's too soon to tell. This is still definitely a possibility. It's there. Right? That could be the 4 before we head down. We have to wait and see. I think more likely there's a little more complexity to it, but we'll wait and see. All right, how am I doing? There's 13 minutes. All right, let's go look at an alternate count here. Right? So for everything we're looking at there, it's kind of hurry up and wait. There's not enough there. There's low probability that 4 is in. So not enough to take a short, not quite enough there for a straight buy. I'm not ready to buy any down here yet because of this potential. If we get this kind of price action, that's a place to take a long, hard look at perhaps, considering some longs. But we'll wait and let that develop. So let me get over here to this alternate count that I wanted to have you guys look at if I can find it. Here we go. All right, so here, sometimes, there can be a danger of too much knowledge. So knowing all of the complexity that can be there in Elliott Wave can be, at times, you can overanalyze something. So I went back to this and said, what is the simplest count I could possibly come up with that would get rid of any complexity in the correction, just simple 5s and 3s? Is there a count here that could be maintained with just 5s and 3s? just kind of for my own exercise to see if I could create a count here that worked. Now I think this has potential. This could be what we're experiencing now. It's all a function of certainly it starts with this pivot here. So I'm still on Bitstamp here. So what did I say that was? Well, we'll call it 64.15. All right, so if we allow for this as our fifth, as our significant top here before we start this correction, could it be done in 3s and 5s? Well, I can certainly get an A, B, and a C down here. And I've got all the subdivision. Here's my 1, 2, 3, 4. I've got great subdivision in my fifth. I've got an A, B, C into that low. Now, is there a way to count this? What's the simplest thing? If you knew nothing about complex corrections and combinations and triples and doubles and WX, YX, YZ, if you just stay with the basics, can I get 5s and 3s out of this? Well, it turns out that I can. Now, I've got to allow for some very deep retracements in my second waves. Yet again, Bitcoin showing that characteristic. And I've got to allow for a truncated fifth here. Got to allow for that. There's so there's the other side of Bitcoin's split personality here. Here's yet again a very difficult 2, but it's an incredibly shallow 2. If I've got a motive wave here. Right? There are alternate ways to count this. I'm not suggesting this is the right count. This is a possible count. So here, could this trade as 1, 2? Well, that would be a very deep 2. Let's consider it. So if I go from that low, allowing for this, granted, I know, all right, purists are not going to like this, allowing for that truncated fifth, right? It happens. It's not like it never happens. So there's a potential 1, A, B, C into a 2. Well, we go all the way to and through the 88.7. Interestingly, that's where we bottom down here. But that wouldn't be relative to this pull here. So look how deep I go for my second, but I stay internal to that pivot. So it's a candidate, albeit we're in low probabilities here for a second, but it is a candidate as a second. Well, I got 5 coming out of that. That's a candidate for a 1. I mean, until these lows are broken, there it is. Right, so let's just keep that going. Right. So if this is a 2, right? So here's the bulls hanging on this thread, and I could be reaching here, but if we allow for that as this from my low here, I clearly, whoops, wrong one. I got a clear 5 out of that. So that if that were a 2, I'd be looking for 5 in my 1. Well, what do I get here? I get almost the exact same percentage. I've broken the 88.7 by almost exactly to the tick, the same difference I did over here. Could this be in green here? 1, 2, 1, 2? Well, until we take out that low, it absolutely can be. Is that likely? Well, we'd be, if you're just looking at the probability, the statistics. If we're looking at the statistics, the probability of a 2 going that low is indeed very low. Right, we're less than 10% of wave 2s going that low that would ultimately go into an impulsive wave here. We'd need to get a pretty sizable move out of that. So so just think about that. All right, so here's this trend line that everybody's looking at. Right, we've seen this whether you're looking at it in log scale. Now, there's a couple of ways to look at this. So if we just go from our 4 low here, we're working through this pivot, and we go right up to this pivot. Now, take note of my earlier work through on the 15-minute. This appears as though there's one more push down. So, it's a little bit of a push-pull between that very short-term analysis and what we can see here on a 4-hour. On the 4-hour, all we're doing is bumping into this trend line. Now, where's the trend line? Is it here? Or are we going to come shy? If I connect this pivot and this pivot, then I've gone shy here, shy here. Well, there's an alternate here that we can consider, which you got to pay attention to. So this was in part of the earlier count. This was they had the possibility here that we were pivoting here for the 2. That was the 786. It was a contender. It's a contender. But we roll over. Now, this may well serve to be resistance. Let me go back down to a 1-hour. That may well serve as resistance on the way back up. I'm in log scale. I'm going to get out because it won't matter. So that could be something to pay attention to. Let me dial that in right on that low. Something to pay attention to. You will often see that with a trend line, as once it's broken, The support that it was offered here, once that breaks, can very easily become the resistance on the way back down. So it might set us up for something along these lines, pushing back down to finish that. As you'll recall, as I was suggesting, the possibility is certainly there that we're just putting in a 4, we've got a little bit of a retrace, and then there's a push one more time down. Well, if that's the case, if we break this low, cannot be a 2. Right, so that's the clear dividing line here of any kind of account that's tied to what I'm proposing to you. So let me take this back out to the 3 hours so we can get the whole thing. All right, so still a contender, and it stays a possibility as a second. Stays a possibility until we break this low. Now, so the way I have it, I've got both of these that are factors here. So I think you want to just be mindful of that as a potential resistance point on the way back up. Just, leave it on a chart somewhere so you can refer to it if we come back up and test that before we push back down. So could this be the low? Boy, that's going to surprise me if I still think there's a little more push down here. Can we get that last kick and not take out that low? It's going to be close. It's going to be close. Now, the other thing I wanted to just, let me go back out here. If we look at this on the larger degree, where did I have it? Let me get up here. So this was another alternate that we looked at in terms of that same idea that we have a potential pivot down here. This is more complexity. Right, I'll finish with this. This was one of the counts we were looking at last week, where we have a lot of complexity. So we have a WXYXZ. Right, so it's a combination that would reduce probability here because of where this is happening in the broader, in the larger degree. But it's there as a contender. So we have to allow for this shallow C. I've been through this count with you guys a couple of times. There would be our X. Then we'd come down into an ABC into our Y. So in a traditional WXY connecting two ABCs, well, that's where it would finish. But we get a contender here for an additional X wave, as we can count out an A, B, and we have to allow for this very shallow C, a short C relative to the length of the A. Does it happen? Yeah. Is it technically possible? Absolutely, right? We don't invalidate any count here. We just have lower probabilities given that wave relationship of C to A. But it wouldn't be the first time that ever happened. A, B, C coming down here for the Z wave. Again, suspect as to whether or not the low is in. But we've got a little room. We got a little wiggle room down here before we break that low, right? So here's our critical low. Could that be it? We'll see. We'll see if that holds. But this would be a potential pivot down here, and this would give us the complexity here of the WXYXZ, right? So that sometimes I look at that and go, am I just overcomplicating it? Which is what takes me back to: is there another way to count it? Is there a simpler way to count it? Which is all we've got right here. Now, if this low breaks, what do we have to pay attention to? Well, let me take that off. Well, let's just think about that. So from this, I'm going to go to the absolute pivot to this low. I might get it right on there. All right, so here's the conundrum. We get a slight break here, so that means algos would have switched, right? So this is a bullish break, meaning that the algos that would have flipped there would have taken the next 50 on the way down. You can see it was here, right? Reaction. That's just classic algos buy. Interestingly, right at the point of control. So there's the buy reaction off of the 50. Ultimately, it rolls down. But where's that target? That target is down here. So if we think about that from this to this, now that would change this count dramatically, right? As there would be no possibility that we had a second here anymore. So for the larger degree, we got to pay attention to that. That would be putting us down at around 5,200 just from algo swing, right? No Elliott wave, right? Just swing high, swing low, golden zone. Here's our target, right? Something to keep in mind, right? And then we have this one all the way back. We can go just to remind you that this is here. So here's the 50. We've all seen this many, many times. And here's the larger degree down here. So from that, let me get this. Bear with me. Got the wrong pivot. Okay, there we are. That's the 3,200 that so many people are talking about. So that's down here. We'll call it 3,250. So from that swing pivot, let me get this back where you can see it. So from our B high up here, to our swing low. That's our double top into our 50. That algo target remains down here. It hadn't moved, right? It's still there at 3,200. So if we're going much, much lower here, then that's all coming back to this sell at the 50. And I promise you that's algos that sold it there and are not going to get out of it until they get down here, right? Or they get stopped out up here, way up here. So a lot of potential paths that we have here. If you're not in the market, boy, I don't know that I would be adding here until we get, another little bit of a pivot down here. That's a reasonable place for some low, well, for some smaller size, right? No reason to try and pick the pivot. You just don't need to. Right? Much more reasonable way to approach it is let a bottom establish and then look for the first retrace. So you've got a clear out would be the prior pivot low. That's a reasonable place to do it because the potential here is for this to break because we've gone so deep. I'd be cautiously nibbling at the buy side here because we've got pretty substantial downside if we're going to fully realize the larger degree sell up here. You know, even still, right? It just becomes a question of where do we find value? Well, we could pull all the way back here, and you could just, if you wanted to simplify, right? If you're like all this Elliott wave stuff, it's like I don't get it, I don't like it, I don't trust it. For every 5 guys that say it's the greatest thing that ever happened, I got another 5 guys say this absolute crap. You know, all I do here is present the evidence. I'll let you draw your own conclusions as to whether or not this is useful. But we could certainly make the claim that this area down here around 6,000. Anywhere in this zone, that's been support. I mean, yeah, we got through it here, but boom, boom, boom. We come down to 6 grand. That seems to be where the market says, okay, that's low enough. I'll buy it there. All right, down here, you know, it's a whole new. We got a whole new count. Something very different is happening, and we certainly have to take any of that bullish bias off if we're going to break these lows. If we're going to break this support zone that's been established down here, and I'm just rounding here, we call it 6 grand. If I bring this up here, that's 6,400, so 59 to 64, pretty well established support down there. So if you're looking at this and you don't want to get into the nuance of trying to pick the turn, that's not an unreasonable place to be potentially adding to your portfolio there. Not unreasonable. I wouldn't be open-ended there because you've got potential from going, call it 6 grand to 3,200. That's a 3K drop if we're going to this target. So you've got to have a spot where you say, okay, I'm out at that. So breaking this low, you know there's going to be just a shitload of stops sitting under that. So that's going to give it some fuel. But you got to be careful about the bear trap. Right, that you always have the potential for the stop run down here and then it rockets and then you wait for the retracement. Those are possibilities. So you've got to be careful about this. Right? I'm still a long-term bull, regardless of what happens here. Long-term bull. I think we're, regardless of, even if we go down here, I think we still are challenging for new highs by the end of the year. But this is a very real possibility. So let's not be reckless about how we approach the market here and trying to get bullish, because we're all ultimately, I don't know about all of us, but many of us are crypto bulls long-term. But let's be cautious about this possibility here for this really dropping much lower. So that's about as much as I can give you. I have, as I said, I continue to stay bullish. I might get dented up a little bit if we break this low, but right now, until I see evidence of that low being broken, I maintain the possibility here that we're just putting in some very deep second waves. All right, don't like it? Give me your alternate. All right, let's keep the hate mail and the hate comments to a minimum. You're just going to get deleted anyway. You want to offer a contrary opinion? You think my count is completely ass backwards? Show me what you're thinking. I'm certainly open to that. All right, just a reminder here, you follow us on Twitter. We're doing a lot of promotion here, a lot of possibility, a lot of opportunity to get trial memberships over on the Discord. If you're interested in this kind of detailed analysis, we can certainly help you learn how to do it. You might follow us on Twitter. It's Trade Devils with an S on Twitter. Or you can always join us here on YouTube and subscribe to this channel, where you're going to get regular updates both from myself and from my partner, Quan. You can look for his update later in the week. All right, guys, that'll do it for today.